Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up, Samoa's Prime Minister bans the country's only newspaper from press conferences.
We will continue doing, we will keep on holding the government accountable, we will keep on highlighting issues.
There's a fuel shortage in Tonga just days out from the national general election. And could New Caledonia be in for another referendum? Samoa's Prime Minister, Laoli Alimaliatua Lewatia Polatai Val-Schmidt, has banned the country's only daily newspaper, the Samoa Observer, from all ministerial press conferences. The editor says media freedom is under threat. Kaya Selby has more.
The Prime Minister of Samoa has kicked the Samoa Observer out of his press conferences and has asked ministers not to speak with their journalists. This ban is temporary but indefinite. In a statement, the Prime Minister said he has observed several reports that are inaccurate and unfair to him personally. Many of these surrounded his 8 weeks spent in New Zealand, where he was being treated for health issues. Samoa Observer editor Shell Chan says that this is in fact unfair to them, and that they were simply doing their job.
Well, we were not actually getting answers beforehand as well, so this doesn't really change much. But yeah, it doesn't change the fact that the job that we have to do, we will continue doing. We will keep on holding the government accountable. We will keep on highlighting issues.
The ban on the newspaper came shortly after Mr. Chan says he was physically accosted by 2 men outside the Prime Minister's home on Saturday. The Prime Minister says that 3 newspaper reporters and photographers trespassed his home despite being stopped by police at the gate. Mr. Shand recalls it differently.
One of my journalists had actually gone to ask the Prime Minister just basically how his trip has been and if he was doing okay since he had come back after 8 weeks, given that there was no constant communication with the Prime Minister, regular communication with the Prime Minister during his 8-week stay in New Zealand. We just thought that maybe since he's back, maybe he would like to say a few things to the people, but he said, he told the journalist at the gate that to come back on Monday, and as the journalist was leaving, and I had just come to drop off actually a camera lens for the journalist, and I was getting into my car when 2 men unexpectedly walked out and started to assault me.
Ever since, Shan says he and other Samoa Observer journalists have been bombarded with online abuse.
The attack against me has actually doubled and tripled on social media. The way it works, fake pages or even people with real pages, and they've been attacking me on social media. It has somewhat impacted my family members a little bit. But hey, we're trying to do a job, we're trying to stand for the truth, and we will continue to do so.
Shan says it's been radio silence from the Prime Minister and other government officials ever since. He says it represents a grave threat to media freedom in Samoa.
That's a decision that he has made for us. We don't really have any sides. We just want answers for questions which we believe the people of the nation need to know, and the questions that he needs to answer. If he has taken the step to ban us, he has just taken a step to stifle media freedom.
The Prime Minister's office has been approached for comment.
Tonga's Supervisor of Elections says everything is almost ready for the kingdom to go to the polls this week. Over 60,000 voters in Tonga have registered to cast their ballots on Thursday. Joining me is our reporter Tiwila Fuatai, who is in Nuku'alofa. Hey, malolele Tiwila, who are the main contenders for Prime Minister?
Malolele Susana from Nuku'alofa. Yes, so we've had some interesting news develop just over the weekend, really. We've had 2 nobles that have basically said publicly through another noble that they would like to be, and these are noble representatives, I should say, so they have seats in the current parliament as noble representatives. One of them is the current Speaker of Parliament, Lord Whakawhanua, and the second is Lord Tuivakano, who's actually a former Prime Minister. So both of those noble representatives have essentially thrown their hats in the ring and said they want to be Prime Minister. And that's interesting because the way that Tonga's election works is that they've got 26 parliamentary seats, right? 17 are people's representatives, so they are elected by regular members of the public. Then we have the 9 noble representatives, and they are the representatives to Parliament that are elected just among nobles themselves. So altogether it's 26. Once those 26 members are elected through the general election, then amongst them they select a Prime Minister. So these two have already said before we've had the polling day that they would like to be Prime Minister. And then, of course, the commentators are also talking about Dr. Aisake Eke, who is the incumbent Prime Minister, so he's standing again. And then, of course, Puakava Meiliki Siausi Sovaleni, the former Prime Minister, who was Prime Minister just up until the end of last year, before he resigned, just before there was a vote of no confidence. He is also standing, he's still in Parliament, so he's returning. So it's sort of like we've got, at the moment, it's looking like 4 potential candidates for Prime Minister, though people haven't really, it's like whether they've declared their hand yet is a different thing. So there's a lot of speculation going on just before polling day, essentially.
Okay, before the 26 parliamentarians elect their Prime Minister, what exactly will happen on polling day, and when can we expect a government?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So on polling day, the polls open at 9 a.m., so nice and early, so people can vote anywhere between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And there's actually over in Tonga, this is on Nuku'alofa and in the outer islands, and in the wider islands, there's actually over 200 polling stations. So I spoke to the Electoral Commissioner, Peter Vuki, and he said really that people should really get out and vote because there's so many places you can vote. Every single village has a voting station. With the nobles, they have their own election process, and so they've got a narrowed voting window of between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m., so just 2 hours. And then the really cool thing about the elections is in Tonga is that, well, I find it neat, is that they actually announce, once everyone's finished voting, the official who's in charge of the polling station, they count everything there, they count the ballot papers, and they will verbally announce the results. So you kind of see exactly who wins, really, or not who wins, but who comes out on top at that particular polling station. And then those papers, they get returned to the Electoral Commissioner's office in town in Nuku'alofa, and then everything is collated there. And then it's probably a bit later, so this year it's Thursday's polling day, and Mr. Vuki, the Electoral Commissioner, said maybe they'll be able to announce results that night, 8, 9, or the last election, it was announced at around 10 p.m. So it's a really speedy process.
All right. Election aside, Te Wila, what's happening with the fuel shortage?
Yeah, good question. So I was just at like an hour ago, just after going to the Electoral Commissioner's office. They're right opposite a petrol station, and there were cars that had been queued up. And I went over to talk to a couple of people to see what was going on. And there were a couple of women there that I spoke to, and they had been there for at least 2 hours. So they got there at 1 o'clock, and they said they were told at that time by the owners of the petrol station that the station would open in the afternoon, and that according to what they heard, that there was a bit of leftover fuel, but there was going to be another tanker that was going to come fill it up that afternoon. 3 o'clock, they were still waiting there. They had parked their car. One of them left to go get lunch, come back. Then they decided to go and buy like a mat, like a fala, just to go and sit in the shade somewhere and keep their car in the queue, because the latest they heard, it wasn't going to be open again until 7 p.m. because that was when the tanker was coming. And so they decided that they were going to wait it out, because as they said to me, how are we supposed to get anything done without any fuel?
Gosh, that's stressful.
Yeah, and I know you were interested in hearing about actually the cause of it. So there was on Monday, there was a press conference that it was like an impromptu press conference, and given I only got to Tonga on Monday night, so I missed it, where the Prime Minister, Dr. Aisake Eke, spoke to media about this topic, because as one of these women that I spoke to today, she said it's been going on for months. Like, she remembers 4 months, and it's just normal to wait for 3 to 4 hours to queue for a fuel shortage. And so she was saying that just has to stop, obviously. Everyone can't do what they need to. They can't go to work. They can't get around. They can't go and see people. So at this press conference on Monday, the Prime Minister, Dr. Eke, basically told media there that the crisis state actually has been a long time in the making. It dates back to last year when 2 of the big fuel companies in Tonga said that they needed to update their fuel storage facilities. So basically there's not enough fuel storage. And that updating or that maintenance process has reduced the amount of fuel storage or that they have, which has basically led to people needing to wait, just not having enough fuel on hand for demand.
The French Minister for Overseas, Naima Muchu, concluded her first 5-day visit to New Caledonia at the weekend. She left with an announcement regarding a rescheduled referendum-like consultation on a project for the French Pacific Territory's political future. But she did not make many pledges regarding further French commitment to tackle a dire financial situation. I spoke with Patrick de Cloyter on our French Pacific desk about the trip. Kia ora, Patrick. Naima Mucho's visit ended last weekend, and after 5 days, what came out of this?
One of the main objectives of her visit was to pursue political talks with all of the parties, especially the pro-independence FLNKS, because this party had decided to pull out of the talks in August after the signature of the so-called Bougival Agreement. Now, if you remember, this agreement was all about finding a new political future for New Caledonia, including the creation of what is described as a state of New Caledonia within France, a new Caledonian nationality, and even further transfers of powers from France to New Caledonia. Now, since she was appointed in October, Muchu has been saying that she wants FLNKS to rejoin the talks instead of rejecting the agreement. All this based on the values of consensus, but FLNKS says and maintains this agreement is simply a lure of independence and doesn't meet their demand for short-term full sovereignty. But at the same time, they say they were still willing to continue talking with the French government, but on their own terms.
So what happened during the political talks last week?
So what happened during the political talks last week is that she ended up meeting each party individually in what is locally described as bilateral sessions. But there was a plenary session with all the other parties who support the Bougival text, yes, but then again, without FLNKS. So the minister concluded her visit with a small statement about the fact that all the other parties, except FLNKS, continued to support this Bougival as a basis for discussion. And she said in order to give it more strength and weight, it will be submitted to the New Caledonian population in something that looks like a local referendum. It is not clear as yet what will be the question asked and who will be entitled to vote. What we know is that the plan is to put this consultation sometime in February 2026. Initially, there should have been a vote in the French Parliament before that, but now this vote to enshrine the agreement into the French Constitution will come after the local referendum, simply because the Parliament vote in Paris could not take place in time this year, mainly due, as you know, to the French instability of the past few months.
But there was another major announcement on political terms that came out just on the last day of the minister's visit, wasn't there?
Yes, and it came from the pro-independence camp, but another one of its major components, apart from FLNKS, and that is the Palika Kanak Liberation Party. It was one of the founding parties of the FLNKS in 1984, and following its recent Congress about a week ago, it's now made it official that it's formally pulling out of the FLNKS. No one can really say it's a surprise because since the riots broke out in May 2024, this moderate pro-independence party expressed a strong disagreement and disapproval of the FLNKS hardline approach under the influence of another founding member of the pro-independence front, the Union Caledonienne. Basically, Palika strongly disapproves of the approach taken and the violence and the destruction. What it says is consistent also with the fact that it supports the Bougival Agreement because it says this consensus makes it possible to reach the full independence and sovereignty goal without violence, but through discussion, and with the French state and the other parties. When I say it's not a surprise, it's because this split has been brewing for at least 1 year openly, and even before that, for the past 20 years or so. It's already been quite a long time since Palika and other moderate pro-independence party, the UPM, have formed their own group, the National Union for Independence, within the local parliament, and the FLNKS is just another group largely dominated by Union Caledonienne. So in essence, it's only a formalization of a situation that has existed for quite a while now. The UPM was also holding its Congress this weekend, and it's widely expected that they will also announce a similar decision.
Now, what about the economy and French continued assistance?
On the economic front, there's been a number of meetings last week as well with business stakeholders, and there is a growing feeling of uncertainty. This is precisely what the business world would like to avoid. They told the minister once again that what they want is visibility and the return of some kind of confidence to reinvest and to relaunch the economy because it's been suffering from the scars of the May 2024 riots and the destruction of employment and companies and businesses, a drop of 13.5% of its GDP over the past 18 months. And still in economic terms, there's a growing resentment not only from the business leaders, but from the government as well, regarding this French loan of 1 billion euros. What they are basically saying is that this loan will have to be reimbursed, and New Caledonia's debt now stands at a rate of about 360%, which they say is not sustainable. They want this debt to be converted simply into a grant, but on that front, Mouchou told them this was not on the French agenda at the moment. Not only that, but there was another clear announcement that came from the minister on the last day of her visit, and it didn't go in the right direction for the business sector. The minister confirmed that a building project to the tune of about $500 million will not go ahead after all. This was supposed to replace the Numia jailhouse, known locally as the Camp Est. This jailhouse is well known and not in a good way because it was on several occasions found in breach of basic human rights. Due to its living conditions, it is overcrowded and inmates have to share their cells, sometimes 5 in the same room. But the minister said on this project, considering the current French budget situation, they just can't afford it, so that's another source of disappointment. And this has left economic stakeholders and business leaders quite worried about New Caledonia's financial situation and its short-term future.
That's Pacific Waves for today. Tomorrow we head back to Brazil where things are heating up at the UN climate talks. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā, sui fua.